The South China Sea is heating up fast, and this weekend it reached a boiling point. As the USS Nimitz and allied Japanese and Philippine ships patrolled near Scarborough Shoal, China scrambled bombers, issued sharp warnings, and accused the three nations of provoking instability. But behind the headlines lies a much bigger story. A growing alliance, a shifting strategy, and a region edging closer to a crisis no one wants, but everyone is preparing for. Here's how a two-day patrol became one of the most important military signals of the year. Over the weekend, the Nimitz carrier strike group teamed up with Philippine and Japanese forces for one of the most powerful demonstrations of naval presence near Scarborough Shoal in years. This joint operation comes on the heels of escalating maritime tensions between China and its regional rivals. Leading the charge was the U.S. Navy's aircraft carrier USS Nimitz, CVN-68, flanked by destroyers USS Wayne E. Meyer DDG-108, USS Gridley DDG-101, and USS Lena Sutcliffe Hugby DDG-123. Joining them were Japan's destroyer JS Aobono DD-108 and the Philippines' flagship BRP Jose Rizal FF-150, frigate BRP Antonio Luna FF-151, and two Coast Guard cutters. Together, these 9 vessels conducted 2 days of joint patrols and high-stakes exercises in one of the world's most contested waters. The drills weren't just routine maneuvers. They included advanced anti-submarine warfare and maritime domain awareness operations. Observers even spotted a C-2 Greyhound from the Nimitz, operating roughly 200 nautical miles south of Scarborough Shoal. Meanwhile, China's Southern Theater Command claimed it scrambled bombers in response, underscoring the high-stakes nature of the encounter. For Washington and its allies, this wasn't just about flexing muscle. It was a clear message. Freedom of navigation and a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific are non-negotiable. U.S. defense officials emphasized that the exercises proceeded safely and without interference, despite Beijing's saber-rattling. This show of force follows Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's recent pledge to restore deterrence in the South China Sea. He announced a new task force aimed at countering Chinese coercion and deepening defense ties with Manila. These moves come as Philippine vessels, often harassed by Chinese ships, remain on the front lines of the region's maritime disputes. Tensions have been simmering for months. In August, a Chinese destroyer collided with a Chinese Coast Guard cutter near Scarborough Shoal, prompting U.S. warships to conduct a freedom of navigation operation. Beijing responded by declaring the shoal a national nature reserve, a move Manila strongly opposed. Since then, Chinese forces have stepped up pressure on Philippine fishing operations, even injuring a sailor during a September clash. This latest joint patrol marks the second time this year an American carrier has partnered with Philippine forces. The first was in January with the Carl Vinson Strike Group. France also joined the fray in February, sending the Charles de Gaulle for its first-ever patrol with Manila. These growing alliances signal a united front against Chinese aggression in the South China Sea. As incidents of ramming, water cannon attacks, and blockades continue, one thing is clear. The Indo-Pacific is becoming the stage for a new era of strategic competition. And this weekend's operation? It was a bold reminder that the U.S. and its allies aren't backing down. The South China Sea just got even more crowded. Nations like the U.S., Japan, Australia, France, and India have stepped up, joining joint patrols to show unwavering support for the Philippines. Their message? Freedom of navigation is non-negotiable. Beijing, however, isn't sitting idle. Chinese warships and aircraft have shadowed these patrols, branding them provocative and destabilizing. Over the weekend, the PLA's Southern Theater Command deployed a bomber formation, likely H-6 bombers, armed with long-range anti-ship missiles. Chinese state media boasted that this move showcased Beijing's ability to strike at sea, a clear warning to anyone challenging its sweeping territorial claims. Washington fired back with its own show of strength. Just 2 weeks ago, the U.S. sent 2 B-1 bombers to fly alongside Philippine fighter jets in a joint aerial patrol over the South China Sea. Manila hailed the exercise as a bold defense of its skies and seas. The message was unmistakable: America and its allies aren't backing down. China's military signaling is more than posturing. It's an attempt to dictate not only what territory it controls, but what its neighbors can do in their own waters. Its efforts to block Manila from Scarborough Shoal highlight why the Nimitz carrier strike group's deployment matters. The U.S. must keep sending a clear signal. We stand with our allies against Beijing's expansionist agenda. Adding to the tension, the armed forces of the Philippines denied spotting Chinese bombers during last week's joint drills with the U.S. and Japan, contradicting Chinese state media reports. Meanwhile, Beijing issued sharp warnings after American, Philippine, and Japanese ships sailed through contested waters inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, a stretch China still claims despite an international ruling rejecting those claims. The coordinated patrol featured U.S. carrier movements and precision maneuvers designed to reinforce regional security. But make no mistake, this isn't just about drills. It's about shaping the future of one of the world's most volatile flashpoints. China is accusing the U.S., Japan, and the Philippines of provoking instability, but offered no specifics. Meanwhile, the White House isn't mincing words. Beijing's sweeping territorial claims and increasingly aggressive tactics in the South China Sea are undermining regional stability and breaking its own promises to resolve disputes peacefully. Washington reaffirmed a critical point. Article 4 of the 1951 U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty applies to armed attacks on Philippine forces, vessels, or aircraft, including its Coast Guard, anywhere in the South China Sea. U.S. officials stressed they're watching the situation closely and remain fully committed to their alliance with Manila. The message is clear. America is and will remain a Pacific naval power. For the Philippines, that commitment couldn't come at a better time. Manila has faced repeated run-ins with Chinese Coast Guard ships in the West Philippine Sea. Its answer? Strengthen partnerships and double down on joint patrols with the U.S. and Japan to assert its rights inside its exclusive economic zone and deter further Chinese interference. The November 14th operation drove that point home, placing Allied ships, including a U.S. carrier strike group, inside waters China claims as its own. And this is just the beginning. The U.S. and Philippines have announced more than 500 military engagements for 2026, including expanded naval operations with partners like Japan. These activities were locked in during high-level defense meetings in Hawaii earlier this month, continuing a tradition of cooperation that dates back to 1958. This surge in military coordination comes amid rising tensions, not only in the South China Sea, but also over fears that a Taiwan conflict could spill into the Luzon Strait. Since 2022, Chinese maritime incidents inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone have pushed President Bongbong Marcos to reinvigorate ties with Washington, transforming a once shaky relationship into a strategic cornerstone. The stakes? Nothing less than the future of security in the Indo-Pacific. And with Beijing doubling down on its expansionist agenda, expect the coming year to be packed with high-stakes maneuvers, bold deterrence, and a race to shape the balance of power at sea. Since 2023, the U.S. and the Philippines have supercharged their military cooperation across the Southeast Asian archipelago, sending a clear message to Beijing. These drills now include advanced missile systems capable of striking deep into mainland China and sinking ships in the Luzon Strait. Unsurprisingly, China isn't happy. Joint patrols in the South China Sea have resumed and intensified as Philippine and Chinese forces clash over contested maritime features. For Washington and Manila, this isn't just about drills. It's about building a stronger defense posture and proving a united front for regional security and disaster response. This year, Maritime Cooperative Activities, MCAs, have been a standout success, boosting freedom of navigation and sharpening interoperability among allies. While the number of planned activities for 2026 mirrors 2024, the focus has shifted dramatically, from internal defense to external deterrence. Exercises like Balikatan, Salaknib, and Kamandag now prioritize coastal defense, anti-ship tactics, area denial, and air defense, reflecting Manila's strategic pivot. In March, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Philippine Defense Secretary Gilbert Teodoro doubled down on this shift. They agreed to ramp up cooperation on defense industrial projects, deploy unmanned surface vessels, expand special forces drills, and forward-position Marine Corps anti-ship missiles in the Luzon Strait. Washington is also deepening its footprint with a new Marine Corps pre-positioning program and plans for a regional munitions hub at Subic Bay. Beijing sees these moves as destabilizing and has responded with diplomatic protests and counter-drills in the South China Sea. But the message from Washington and Manila is unmistakable. The alliance is stronger than ever, and it's ready to meet any challenge. These plans, alongside trilateral commitments with partners like Japan, signal a future of relentless cooperation at sea. And as tensions rise, expect the Indo-Pacific to become the stage for some of the most consequential military maneuvers of the decade. By the time the patrol ended, one thing was clear. The balance of power in the South China Sea is shifting. The Philippines, Japan, and the United States just demonstrated a level of coordination Beijing didn't expect and can't ignore. China answered with its own show of force, proving it has no intention of backing down. And so, the stage is set. Not for war, but for a new era where every patrol, every warning, every radar lock carries weight. The Indo-Pacific has become the world's most dangerous chessboard, and this was just one move.